It is so hard as somebody who loves numbers and loves to quantify things. I mean, we are building brand awareness, right? So we're changing public perception. How do you quantify that? We're not in sales. PR is not sales. PR is fundamentally like building brand awareness and visibility. So ultimately, that should lead to sales, but that is certainly not what our role is, and that is not what we quantify. However, there are ways that press hits can be quantified. There are ways that influencer content, posts, and stories can be quantified. But a lot of the other things that we do, and we really don't bill based on hourly work either. I mean, there's like an inherent value that we have because of our experience, because of our connections, because of our objectivity and what we're seeing in this space. I think it kind of leads to why I chose the name of Counsel for the business too, because we want to be an extension of the brands who we work with. So we want to be of counsel to them on anything related to PR. And that requires a long-term relationship. You know, what that implies is that we understand the brand, we can speak their language, and that we are taking the time to build relationships on their behalf. And all of that stuff is not fast.
Welcome to the Marketing Factor. I'm your host, Austin Dannerage, the CEO of Cobble Hill. And today I'm joined by Jackie Thomson, the founder of Counsel. If you're wondering what PR really looks like in 2025, especially for creative and aesthetic-driven brands, this episode is going to be eye-opening. I've worked with Jackie for over 13 years at Cobble Hill, and I've had a front row seat to how she transforms brands. Whether you're a brand owner wondering about the true value of PR or marketing, looking to enhance your storytelling, or simply curious about how modern PR works beyond the press release, you're in for an insightful conversation. Jackie, thanks so much for joining the Marketing Factor.
Yeah, so glad to be here. I love listening to all your episodes. There are so few, I feel like, podcasts that address the evolving marketing space. So it's fun to kind of lend some perspective.
I'm glad you think there's few of those. I feel like they're everywhere. I feel like everyone has a podcast now.
I don't know. I don't know that I listen to any that are done kind of quite as well and give this, I don't know, evolving perspective from digital advertising to PR to influencer to events. Maybe in the kind of elevated lifestyle space specifically, which is, you know, the world where we live and work. So that part feels especially relevant.
Yeah, we overlap a lot, kind of, I think, on clients. And even in the early days of Cobble Hill, I was, driving up to your office in Charleston and begging you for any clients that I could get because I just loved your portfolio. But you guys have always had great brands. Do you recommend that the brands you work with start podcasts, be on podcasts, you pitch podcasts, or podcasts kind of the big, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it's all storytelling, what we do. I mean, I feel like PR seems to be an elusive thing to most people, including my family and closest friends. So I just say, distilling it down to just something really simple. It's storytelling. It's taking the brand, and we're the conduit for telling that story to the people that needs to hear it. And podcasts offer this really long form opportunity. You think about print and digital press and these little sound bites or product placements, but how often do you have time for a brand founder to really talk in a more extensive way about their business, and for people to really better understand like the ethos behind, the brand story. So I think podcasts are awesome. And yes, they're a big part of pitching to media.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, you've democratized a little bit of media from when you started, back in the days at, when you used to be at Leapfrog. And then even before that, I mean, you worked at Gucci, I believe. And I mean, I think it's just, like I was saying, the democratization of the actual media landscape has really it's made the shift in the traditional PR playbook, it's pretty seismic, especially for aesthetically driven brands, right?
Right.
Can you describe was that a jolt for you, or has it been easy for you to kind of navigate that?
I feel like everything that I've done has been kind of intuitive, and probably around, I was looking at some old proposals recently, and even around like 2014, influencer was part of how we addressed building brands and building brand awareness and visibility. So that was partly because I was following bloggers, and I felt like if they were kind of informing me about new products and brands, then surely that was happening also for other people. And we needed to use influencers and bloggers at the time as the conduit for telling that story or for the brand discovery piece. So, yes, I think that where it used to be PR was squarely media relations. I mean, that was really the bulk of what we did. And it was print media, then it evolved to digital media. And then, yeah, the shift between, Instagram as a medium for telling a story or for influencers having that platform for featuring, products and influencing buying decisions as they do is it's huge. And I think any PR firm that doesn't integrate influencer marketing and affiliate marketing into their just general like strategy is not doing the right thing by their client. And I still feel like there are plenty of them that aren't, because a lot of people come to us just for the influencer side, and they might say, my firm handles media relations. They don't really touch influencer. And I often think that's just such a disservice because they overlap. I mean, they inform each other, and you really can't build a business based on just media relations now. You can't as a brand just rely on that. It's great credibility. And I think it's great as a brand to say, wow, I was featured in Vogue, but it doesn't drive sales. So, there are these great long-term effects from having, that stamp of credibility from like a heritage media outlet, but that doesn't do much in the way of really driving sales. And maybe that's still just reaching one small demographic of your customer.
Yeah. For us at Cobble Hill, right, we're always looking for content and content that we're going to run in ads or in emails. And we have found that, if we run ads that say, Callie's biscuits featured in, Vogue or featured on Oprah or something like that, then that specific press mention in that ad will actually convert higher. But we also find that influencers do great too, right? So there is like influencer content that we need as well. So it is a combination of both. And I think that if you truly want to be a PR company now, you have to have chops in both. You at least need to know about both of these things. But I think it's really hard, coming in now to have that media relations background. And I'm sure you find that too, where you've been doing it for long enough that you have this huge network of contacts.
Mm-hmm.
I would be interested in kind of, your expertise is truly in kind of connecting the entrepreneurs, the influencers, and the media relations people.
Yeah.
And interested in that trajectory and where it started for you, because you just constantly have to be going to events, meeting people, networking. Does your life just feel like you're constantly through the past, your entire working life, just constantly going to events? I guess my question is like, take me through the trajectory there, and how is it different from when you started in New York to now in Charleston?
I mean, I think your life has to be, it's busier just because a lot of what we do, we kind of consider our business to be, there are 4 buckets that we touch all the time. And that's media relations, influencer relations, strategic partnerships and collaborations, and events. And the events is what you've just talked about. And that is just such a huge part of bringing a brand story to life. And attending events, throwing events. I think all of this is the bigger pattern I'm seeing is that it's relationships. So it's building relationships and the importance of having genuine relationships and building trust with your clients, with the influencers who you're working with the media outlets, editors, writers who you're working with. So yes, there's a lot of time on the back end that we spend building those relationships and having those, genuine connections to people, because I would hate for my work to be transactional in any way. And I think that maybe the secret sauce a little bit that we have is that we don't approach anything that we do to be formulaic or transactional. I think we really take the time to get to know our clients and to dig into their brand DNA first. We act as an extension of their team. We have a nuanced understanding of their business and how they want to be perceived. So that's number one. And then we have to be really well versed in that story and telling that story. And then the next step is to whom? Is that to the press? Is that to influencers? Is that to other brand founders? That the scope that we're widening about who is an influencer is another big piece of this, because it was blogger, it was influencer. I mean, we consider it to be and we mainly our demographic is mainly women, so I'll say women here, but women with influence. And that can be a tastemaker, it can be a chef, it can be an interior designer, it can be anybody who has a platform to help tell a story on behalf of a brand or a business. So when you widen that aperture and you kind of say, okay, an influencer can be a lot of different things. I think you're only as good as the relationships that you have and how genuine those relationships are. Because, I want to make sure when I'm sending an email or reaching out to somebody that it's going to be opened and it's going to be considered. And typically that happens because they know that I have a genuine care and understanding of them, that person, and making sure that it's relevant to them and I'm not wasting anyone's time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good thread. There is this relationship a little bit between, hosting an event for a brand and then a longer term PR strategy for that
Yep.
brand, right? Can you give me an example of a client you've worked with recently and how that event that you host is part of a longer term PR strategy, and how you curate kind of the right mix of people and, brand awareness for that, for that strategy, and then more specifically for the event?
I guess a good example would be a year ago, Loeffler Randall opened a store in Charleston, and the two founders, Jesse and Brian, it was their first store outside of New York City, and I kind of knew them loosely. So they came to me and just said, we need help opening this store. We really need to get to the right people. We need to make a splash for the store opening, and we need to make sure that we also continue to get people coming to the store and that we're on the radar of media and of influencers, anybody who may be traveling to Charleston or just the local community also. So we started a little bit in advance, kind of planning the event, just the opening event. And one of the things that I said to Jessie that, she talked about actually during the dinner that I think resonated with her was, I need to understand how you entertain at home. I want to know what you do when you're with your friends and the things that you typically do when you gather together a group of women. And she was like, wow, I just thought it would be kind of a brand dinner. And, my answer to that is we don't throw events without a really specific purpose. A brand dinner is boring. They happen all the time. So how are we really going to dig into something personal about Jessie to help people really understand her and for everybody to walk away with something that's memorable and, dare I say, transformative, that really helps them say, like, I get this brand, I get why she started it, I know who she is, and I'm going to be an ambassador of this brand forever because I just really feel this visceral connection. So she kind of talked about how, she loves crafts, and when she entertains at home, they do like all these different things like paint, taper candles and make things together and use your hands. So we got this local artist to kind of come during the dinner, and everybody created a little work of art with cut forms and created little flowers out of paper. But it was something that helped people understand who Jessie is And it helped, I think, everybody kind of leave feeling like they felt something personal and some connection to her, and that it wasn't just we sat down, had dinner, talked, and went home. And I think that's where people really miss when they host these kinds of things. And then from that dinner, we kind of developed some other small events like Mother's Day events. We developed a consistent influencer strategy where monthly we identified 2 or 3 people who maybe were, had a large TikTok following. Maybe their content creation was beautiful. They could come into the store and create beautiful video and still content for us. Maybe they had a blog presence where they had a city guide related to Charleston. So we got some great visibility for the store that way. So we kind of looked at all these different ways that we could leverage the strengths of different content creator partners for the year following the event, so that we had this long tail effect following the store opening that would really allow people to see it, visuals from inside the store through the lens of some really talented creators.
So when you have, you have that longer term play for Loeffler, who's a brand that I love. They actually they've been around for long enough too that I feel like there is brand awareness at play there. Mm-hmm. And so it's more of like exposing it to the Charleston market and realizing how it fits into the Charleston landscape a little bit and why they want to be there and talking to the right people. It's a different approach for newer brands, right? That are not necessarily Loeffler Randalls, that don't necessarily have, the same brand vision or been around, the longevity. What's your approach there? Like because ours is interesting and different, and it makes it more challenging. But sometimes if you can kind of get behind the vision, which is really kind of the preliminary thing that you have to do when you work in our business, you have to get behind the vision and the founder. How does that approach differ from someone like that versus someone like a Loeffler?
I think it's the same in that, when we do any event, even if it's a small brand, we say, like, what is the bold purpose of this event? Lake Pajamas is now kind of a household name, but when they just started, we helped them open their Charleston store, which was their very first store. And I remember I had this wild idea that we should do a pajama party. Instead of an influencer dinner and a brand dinner, we should literally bring together a group of influential tastemakers and women in Charleston and dress them in pajamas, like gift them pajamas in advance, and urge everybody to come wearing pajamas. And we were going to do a pajama party. So they agreed to this crazy idea. And we did champagne pong, and I had a tarot card reader and played like 90s rap music loud in the store, and we danced and laughed. And, again, it just was something that was tapping into something different, something memorable. And the founders, Ann Reed and Cassandra, don't take themselves seriously, and they didn't want anything to be too precious, and they didn't want it to be too intensive a dinner. It felt right to them too, that we would do something that was lighthearted. So I think you just have to dig a little bit and figure out, what am I going to do that's really memorable? And that could be, we worked with another small brand to do a fun dinner last summer, and we did a little tequila tasting in the beginning of the dinner, and everybody got a little loose, and it felt very right to the founder, who just loves tequila and loves her margaritas. But it just wasn't that everybody's arriving and sitting down and having a dinner, and you leave so empty sometimes because you realize how expensive these events are and how much planning has gone into them, but then you leave almost feeling empty because you don't know why. And maybe even you've met the founder, but there just wasn't anything there that was memorable or transformative. So I do feel like, regardless of your budget, and many of the events that we throw, by the way, are very like bootstrapped. I mean, we rarely work with brands who have huge budgets. So it's all, small business and just trying to, bring the brand to life offline, which is important in this, world of social media swirl.
Well, it's totally, it's like being in Charleston, it kind of gives you that strappiness, which I think has been good. And that's what I've observed from you uh, for the past 13 years. It's like still able to work with great brands that are on a national scale that can do, that can support uh, our services and stuff like that. But there is a level of just being like, there's a different vibe than being in New York City or being in LA when you live in Charleston in the approach that you take. And I think that a lot of the resilience of being in this business for so long is just having that grittiness from being in those bigger cities early in my career. I'm sure that shaped you because I see, Carter and I talk about it all the time. We're like, dude, we were working until, 9 o'clock at night and then going to an event after that when we lived in the city. It's
Right.
not, and then nowadays, and I'm not saying, I don't want to like put this in like some sort of, millennial style perspective, but that's not the case anymore, especially not the case in Charleston. And I think having a little bit of that grittiness and then applying it down to Charleston, it
Yeah.
kind of gives you the drive. And I would imagine is something that, has contributed to your success.
I definitely think that structure that I had working for those bigger companies and the expectations of you really set the tone for my work ethic. I do just inherently, part of maybe my problem is I really want to please my clients. So I rarely say no, and I extend myself often, and I do more than I say I will. But I do feel like working with small businesses is so rewarding to me, and oftentimes that means a smaller budget and a lower retainer rate. But I just have found that when I help somebody really grow their business from these early days and early phases through, just the evolution of, bigger brand growth, it's awesome. And I don't know that I'd give it up for more money, but I don't, think that's for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little bit of, there's definitely that. I love working with the small growing business and seeing this like monumental shift and knowing that we are actually able to help this business. There's also the aspect of when you work with creative brands, there is, you have to have the ability to kind of quantify what you're doing, especially when ROI isn't like immediately tangible, right? And I would
Right.
imagine that's even, it's a little easier for us to do because we can say, okay, your return on ad spend is X amount.
Right.
But from a PR perspective, and I see this, it's like sometimes this takes a year to be able to quantify. How do you approach that conversation, and what do you do, and what metrics do you follow, or does that not even matter and you're just like, it's all vibes?
It is so hard as somebody who loves numbers and loves to quantify things. It is just I mean, we are building brand awareness, right? So we're changing public perception. How do you quantify that? We're not in sales. So, I mean, PR is not sales. PR is fundamentally like building brand awareness and visibility. So, ultimately, that should lead to sales, but that is certainly not what our role is, and that is not what we quantify. However, there are ways that press hits can be quantified. There are ways that influencer content, posts, and stories can be quantified. Um, but a lot of the other things that we do, and we really don't bill based on hourly work either. I mean, there's like an inherent value that we have because of our experience, because of our connections, because of our objectivity and what we're seeing in this space. I think it kind of leads to why I chose the name of Counsel for the business too, because we want to be an extension of the brands who we work with. So we want to be of counsel to them on anything related to PR. And that requires a long-term relationship. What that implies is that we understand the brand, we can speak their language, and that we are taking the time to build relationships on their behalf. And all of that stuff is not fast. So I think you have to have the appetite for that as a brand, and you have to kind of know that. I feel like I've become better at sussing out the right kind of clients and realizing when they actually don't need PR, when they might need digital advertising. And, I send them over to you because I can't pull that lever fast. I can't make that happen very quickly. I mean, there are certainly some things we can do in getting products in the hands of the right people who can immediately raise some visibility on social media, sure. But that's not really the strategy. The strategy is so much more layered than that.
There's a nuance to what we do, because you're like, a client comes to us and says, hey, what should I do? I only have X amount of money. And you can't just be like, okay, just do PR. Okay, just do digital advertising. Just do such and such, just do a photo shoot, just do a brand or a custom website. Because I don't think it's any of those specific things. It's really hard to give a roadmap because every brand is different and every brand needs a unique set of services outside of what their particular skill set is. But one thing that I've found that's like very unifying in all these brands that are successful that we've worked with, and you too, because a lot of those we've worked with a lot of those same ones, is the founder, especially if we're thinking startups, not, established businesses, but more startups, early stage, growing businesses. The founder is so involved. They're very clear on what the vision of the business is. They're very engaged. They're not pushy, but they're definitely not just relying on our expertise. They're actually collaborating with us. They have somewhat of a perspective on this. I would imagine you feel the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell that right off the bat? Or is that something that...
I think it's hard to tell right off the bat. I think there are two things about that just come to mind. Is there are some founders who also don't want to be in front of their brand. So they want to be behind it, which is hard because, we do really want to. It's easier for us to have a person. It's easier for humans to connect with other humans. So when we're just talking about a brand and we don't have the human element, that's really hard. It is also very hard when they come to us and just say, here's the suite of services that we want, go ahead, without the feedback loop. And as you said, those conversations and the time and the ability to dig in with the founder and to really understand what makes them tick. And also part of our job too is figuring out, what do they really want? Because it's not just assumed that you want this suite of services or these outcomes. Sometimes it surprises you when people come and say, all I really want is X, Y, and Z. And you're like, oh, okay. I didn't know that. I didn't, realize that maybe all you really want is a placement in, Garden Gun, or you just want this one Vogue hit, and or you really want to work with this one influencer, have this particular collaboration. So we really try to understand, what is the goal? Like, what is the goal in the next quarter? What is the goal over the next year? So that we can really ladder up towards that big thing that they really want to achieve. Because it's not really on us to develop the strategy without knowing and hearing from that founder what's really important to them and how do they want to leverage our expertise, because they might have somebody on their team that's really good at something that we do already. And they might be really, really, proficient at anything that we do, like the influencer space or, event planning or, just understanding content and the right kind of photography. We get involved in all those things too. But, nothing that we do is formulaic. We look at every single client and every single project so individually, which makes it hard sometimes, but I do feel like it is important to have a founder who's very attuned to how they want the brand to be perceived, and then also what they're looking for in a creative partner.
That's one thing, as being in the service-based business, it's over the 13 years we've evolved. When we were first starting to come to you, we were like, hey, we'll shoot photos, we'll do video content, we'll build websites, we'll do branding, we'll do like a print collateral piece. And over the years, we've honed it down to be this very specific set of services, email marketing and paid marketing for a very specific type of vertical with a very specific like growth trajectory, and nothing outside of that. And so it's allowed us to scale our team in proportion to that, where everyone is very clear on the sets of services. And what I found when we were doing all of these things before was everyone is kind of like, well, how do we do logos again? How do we do this and this? There's just so much to do. And I would imagine the drawl of what you are doing from the PR space can be that way sometimes too, because there's a lot you can do for these brands. And especially if you're, like you said, you're coming up with these kind of bespoke ways of working with everyone, I would imagine that becomes incredibly challenging, but also what they need. And honestly, why people probably want to work with you, or one of the main reasons. Are there like fixed processes, frameworks, principles that you apply for yourself and for your team that are no matter what, you stick to these?
Yeah, I think, to your point, I was a generalist too in those early days. You do everything. You take every type of client. I mean, you learn.
That's the word, generalist.
Yeah.
Generalist.
Yes.
I was looking for that.
No, because it's true. I mean, it's like I'd laugh thinking about all the things that we did, and you're just trying to gain a little bit of a reputation. You're trying to gain experience. You learn something from all those things. And then, yes, I mean, I finally, you landed in a place, hopefully at this point in our careers, where a little bit of that becomes specific. You niche down, the kind of world and the category that you excel in, and the type of clients. I think the type of clients that we work really well with as a retainer client is somebody who's got a proof of product, and they've got a thriving business that can afford a PR team. But they still can be small, and we still can do valuable things for them at like what I consider to be a lower retainer rate. I would say once a company gets to be like a $10 million a year company, they probably don't need us anymore, or they need something different as far as a PR partner is concerned. And that's fine. I mean, I can understand how that evolution happens. When it comes to approaching like a new business, a new proposal, or just working with a new client, we always have these phases. And phase one is really, as I said, digging in. We obviously can look at their website and their social, but we want to see all of their photography, because ultimately what we're sharing is visual and it's written. So we want to make sure that we develop copy that's compelling, and we want to make sure we have photography that's also compelling, and that those two things marry together nicely, and that they're also representative of what we want this client, how we want them to be perceived. So, if all of a sudden the photography is kind of like blah and it's not editorial, and we just don't think it's something that we can send to the type of media outlets that we want to work with, and we backtrack and say, okay, we need to help develop like a better photo shoot. We can help with some creative or vision, board for you to really like get the right content, because if we're going to represent your brand, we want to make sure we have all the tools to do that effectively. So we kind of do that brand audit, so to speak, first. And then the four things that we do for any client are media relations, influencer relations, strategic partners and collaborations, and events. And really, those things are kind of like, they should all be working in tandem, but some of them are more long-term plays and some of them are more quick and short-term plays. But those four things need to be kind of part of any project or strategy. So we kind of look at what that looks like for each client. And it's interesting because, we work with brands who are based in LA or Turkey or, the Bahamas, in the Northeast. I mean, we don't really have currently a client that is a retainer client based in Charleston. So we're really kind of, representing these brands on a national scale. But there are these little geographic pockets and there are these little kind of demographic pockets that are growth opportunities. So we oftentimes take that into consideration when we're looking at those four things and how can we work some of those opportunities for growth in those specific areas. Because again, I mean, we can look at generally growth for social media and online, but we like to have like a more clear vision of what is the goal in the next 3 months and how can we help achieve something that's a little more specific versus just like we want broader brand visibility and we can always work towards that. But then we like to drill down on something that's really specific.
What have you learned through training clients over the years, right? Like a challenging thing for me when I started was just kind of doing whatever the client said, you know? But as you get more and more experience doing this, you realize that they're actually paying for your expertise, right? There is a level of they're like, we want to be on the Today Show. We want to be in Garden and Gun. Well, you hear it's the same kind of song and dance for a lot of these brands, which is fine. And it's a worthy endeavor and one that you guys, have a high make rate of achieving. But there is just a level of hey, we're going to actually push you in a different direction, or we think there is a different strategy at play here.
Mm-hmm.
What have you learned through the years on how to navigate those conversations? And honestly, less about navigating the conversation, but what do you tell clients? Because we have people that listen to this podcast who are starting businesses and want those sort of things. But there is a level of being realistic about this and starting smaller sometimes and working your way up.
I think a lot of people take for granted kind of what those outlets are and don't really read them or watch them or really consume them in a meaningful way. So yeah, I think there are some times where we've had clients where there's such a disconnect. I mean, if it's Garden and Gun, maybe they're not really reading it from cover to cover to really understand the type of content and the consistent columns that are in that magazine and how products or people are covered in that magazine. So that's on us. I mean, communications is a huge part of what we do, but also client communications. And some of that comes with experience and confidence, just, through the years and being able to say that as somebody who is an inherent people pleaser. It's hard, but I think that is our job, and the onus is on us to share what's realistic. If they share goals with us that they want, I think it's back to us to kind of say that's probably not going to happen in the next 3 months. Here are the things we need to do to work towards that goal. Maybe that is better photography. Maybe that is an interesting brand collaboration that will build credibility for your young brand. Maybe we can partner with something who's more established, who's a little bit bigger, and who can lend that credibility to you. And then it creates this newsworthy opportunity for us to talk about it to some of those media outlets that you're hoping to, get in front of. So I think we're always trying to figure out yes, we hear you. What are the ways that we can kind of get there, a stair-step approach to that? And that kind of leads back into the way this is a marathon and not a sprint, which we say a lot to clients. And not everybody has the appetite for that kind of longevity in a relationship. But a lot of these things just take a lot of time to achieve. And these editors and writers and producers get so many pitches every single day. So, part of it is on us to develop those relationships so they will pay attention to our emails. And part of it is also on us to make sure that we're sharing something that's relevant, that's timely, and that's compelling. So when we're sending those emails, we're making sure that they're not going to be ignored because they just don't make sense. And I think that is part of, that's on us, because if we start to have a reputation for sending things on behalf of clients that aren't relevant, then we're going to lose the attention of those valued relationships. So, a lot of times we do have to say no, because I'm not willing to risk my reputation to do something that's dumb.
Yeah. How do you make a like a pitch stand out then?
I think that it's a deep, deep knowledge of what that writer likes and what their beat is, so to speak. And following them on Instagram is an easy thing, because you kind of understand, maybe it's like, oh, wow, I just saw you came back from, that great trip to the Bahamas. It looked amazing. I mean, again, we are trying to massage these relationships and not to be transactional in how we approach any of these opportunities. So I think there has to be a little bit of a personal, connection. And then it's succinct, it's to the point. Maybe we embed an image to really illustrate something, never to attach it, but just to have something visual in there to show, because attachments oftentimes go to spam. Um, and then, just a subject line that's really easy and clear, because a lot of times they file these pitches away. You might not hear right away from an editor, but if something is in the subject line that really helps them understand what the pitch is about, they'll save it and come back to it.
What's an example of like a good subject line?
It would be like maybe a client for your discoveries column. And, so I'm saying to them, I know where I'm pitching this. I know what it's for. I'm being very clear with you that I know what you write about and where this would fit. You never want to be too kind of presumptuous. I think this would be perfect for, blah, blah, blah. But you do have to share that you know where it's going and how you're framing it. So I think there's that, in this space of media, there is market stories which feature products, and oftentimes that's tied to affiliates. So I know we haven't touched on affiliates, which is like a whole new world really in our space, but media uses affiliates just like influencers do. So when you're reading a lot of these digital stories and product gift guides, for instance, and you click on the link, you'll see in your little URL, it's going through skim links or share sale. So you'll see that media outlet, that publisher, Hearst and Condé Nast and all the big ones are using affiliates, and they have a back end system for what brands are on affiliates at what percentage, and they're choosing products based upon those things. So we're playing up against a little bit where, making sure that our clients too, with share sale and skim links, that they have a competitive affiliate rate in place, and that we're also communicating that to editors and freelance writers and Substack writers and all that.
Yeah, the affiliate space is on one hand, it's been around forever, because you look at the share sale website and it's so old and exactly the same as when I started working in the industry, almost 20 years ago. And
Yes.
then there's there is this new engaged amount of people who are like, you have to have affiliates. Tell me about affiliates. I've never heard of this stuff.
Yeah.
It's definitely, it's a whole strategy there that I think would be cool to kind of uncover with you in a different episode for sure. I think that it's a question that gets brought up quite often. With I guess the one kind of small little soundbite would be which affiliate platform do you recommend these days in January 2025?
Well, share sale is kind of the base, the dashboard, and then skim link, you have to have that first. And then skim links you layer on top, and that is really desirable for media, for digital media. And then obviously LTK also can be layered on that for influencers specifically. And then there's another one called ShopMy that is really taking a ton of market share in the influencer space specifically. And their dashboard and the way that they onboard with brands and the way that they allow creators to use their shopping affiliate links, but also kind of their shopping page and sharing that has really kind of transformed things, I would say, in the last 6 months. So that's just what's on the horizon, I think, in the influencer space. And for us as a firm to really be able to know it on the back end and to respect it and use it well, but to not rely on it. Because I think losing the human kind of touch and the human connection by just automating everything, or by just saying, okay, I'm going to send influencer stuff to Shopify and I'm going to allow them to run my influencer campaigns, that doesn't ever go well either, because I think you really never develop a relationship or connection to these creators, and it feels very transactional, and it feels very much like it's coming from a bot.
Well, and I think that eventually, that's you will not be of service anymore if you're just constantly kind of outsourcing this stuff to these tools like Shopify. I think that kind of brings up a much bigger subject too that I don't necessarily want to get on, but like how has AI, you think, affected what you guys are doing now?
I mean, it's cool because like we use this platform called Pitchcraft, which is something for like PR professionals to really connect with freelance writers and staff writers and editors and media outlets. But it also is a community for people in the PR world to share ideas, share opportunities. And they have this new service too, where you can plug in like a quick pitch, like 2 sentences, and they'll spit out like all the writers that they think are relevant based upon keywords that you've used. So we've always used it a little bit for copywriting and for pitching and for helping us like really perfect, what we're sending out or how we're writing or the stories that we're telling. So that's great. But I do feel like as it relates to some of these bigger software programs that we're using and relying on, it's going to just speed up finding the right people to connect with and really like quickly honing in on, who's the right person who's relevant for this pitch and this product opportunity.
It's still keeping the human touch in what you're doing and reaching out to that person now, right?
Yeah, totally. And we do that all through, email, not through DM and not through the software and not through, but just, I mean, and email doesn't feel that personal, but it's way more personal than using any of these other kind of back end ways of sending mass emails. And that's another thing we've never been like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks in terms of sharing information or even sending out press releases or pitching to anyone. I mean, I think it has to be, as I was said with the subject line, I'm sending it to you for this story because it's relevant to something that you write, rather than sending it out in BCC to 50 people and just making it general.
All right, I got 5 rapid fire questions for you.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Can you pitch a brand that just relies on their product and there's no storytelling for fashion?
I can't.
What's the last book you read?
The Art of Gathering.
Who's the most interesting influencer on TikTok right now?
I'm rarely on TikTok, Austin.
Can be Instagram, I guess. You shouldn't admit that you're a PR person not on TikTok, though.
Well, that's Kat on my team is the TikTok.
She's the TikTok, yeah.
It's not that it's just not me. The most interesting person on Instagram right now.
Brand.
I love following Lily Sisto. I feel like she has a great eye and she has a really fun energy. And I think she's got a bright, bright future.
What do you think is going to be like trending over the next year?
I feel like we're going to hear way more from Shopify as an affiliate platform, and they're going to take a ton of market share from LTK and Substack.
I love Substack. I feel like just like that direction of owning your own content and stuff like that. I mean, that obviously has been big for the past 4 years, right?
I love it because there are all these amazing writers and editors who've been laid off, and they have finally got this way of like communicating probably what they've always wanted to communicate, that they felt, that they couldn't because they're beholden to the outlet that they work for, but they're really creatively sharing something that feels personal and their point of view in long format on Substack. And it's a very welcome addition to the media space.
I've been trying to get Carter to. She has a Substack. She has a Substack. She's done 2, but she just I'm like, it's the type of thing you just have to be consistent with. But it's so good.
So good.
Jackie, dude, I could have you on every week. You have so much to share. Where can people find you if they want to learn more?
So they can find us of Counsel PR on Instagram, ofcounselpr.com is our website. And please reach out if you have any questions. I'm kind of an open book. So I appreciate it so much, Austin. It was really fun.
Super fun. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.